The air in the Harper mansion always felt thick, not with dust, but with unspoken expectations and an unnatural chill. I, Sophia Harper, the 17-year-old biological daughter they found 2 years ago, stood in the library, holding the phone, waiting for my mother, Margaret, to finish her airy explanation. Oh, darling, I'm so dreadfully sorry, she chirped, her tone slightly too theatrical. We just sent Lily off this morning. Paris, you know. That art history intensive she simply couldn't miss. My heart sank, but only a little. I'd learned to anticipate this. I'd called to finalize the details for the small trip we were supposed to take, just the three of us. I see, I said, keeping my voice level. She didn't mention it. Oh, it was a sudden thing, but don't worry, sweetie, we promise you'll go next time. Perhaps Rome? You'd love the historical architecture, wouldn't you? She quickly changed the subject, eager to avoid the awkward pause where her neglect lay exposed. Next time. That was the Harper family mantra for me. I hung up, walking over to the immense cold windows overlooking the expansive New York garden. It had been 2 years since the bombshell dropped, 2 years since a routine medical inquiry led to a blood test, revealing that the girl they had raised as their own, Lily Grant, was not related to them. And I, a quiet, resilient girl being raised in a modest home by two wonderful foster parents, John and Anna Williams, was the actual Harper heir. It was a nurse's mistake, Mrs. Johnson's mistake. Two infants swapped at birth. When I first returned, the transition was jarring. My birth parents, Richard and Margaret, were consumed by guilt and confusion. Margaret awkwardly explained that they needed to keep the truth quiet. Lily would stay for a while, and I wouldn't yet be publicly recognized as the real daughter. They feared hurting Lily's feelings, an understandable sentiment that quickly curdled into full-blown favoritism. My older brother, Nathan, then 20, took one look at my secondhand clothes and my quiet reserve and scoffed. You look like you shop at thrift stores, he mocked, dismissing me as unsophisticated before retreating to his sports car. He was easily influenced by Lily's polished image. Lily, sweet, talented, and utterly perfect Lily, was their primary concern. She was the one they had known and loved for 17 years. They showered her with attention, trips, and gifts, trying desperately to compensate for the biological truth that now separated them. Inadvertently, this indulgence resulted in my total neglect. I was the inconvenient truth that threatened the perfect family portrait, so they simply tucked me into a guest room and hoped I wouldn't cause a scene. I was home, but utterly displaced. The atmosphere became toxic almost immediately, thanks to Lily. She was a master of performance. In front of Margaret and Richard, she was all wide-eyed sweetness, calling me Sophie Darling, and offering to share her designer clothes, which I politely declined. But behind their backs, her true nature emerged. She was selfish and calculating, a black belt in subtle sabotage. When I was placed at the prestigious private school with her, the manipulation went into overdrive. In class, if I answered a difficult question correctly, Lily would immediately follow up with an overly dramatic, "Oh, Sophia, you're just so brilliant. It's unfair how quickly you grasp things, unlike poor me." It sounded like praise, but it painted me as the relentless, cold academic, while she was the relatable, struggling artist. Her most damaging scheme involved my school applications. She accidentally told Margaret that I was struggling in my advanced placement classes, suggesting I might drop them to focus on adjusting. Margaret, worried about my stress levels, and likely relieved at the thought of me not surpassing Lily, almost pulled me out. I had to intervene, presenting my perfect grade reports to prove her wrong. At school, I was quickly ostracized. Lily, the established darling of the school's social scene, had skillfully spun a quiet narrative. I was the bitter, needy cousin who had suddenly appeared to leech off the Harper's wealth, the one who caused trouble and drama. When boys showed interest in me, she would sweetly warn them that I was still fragile from being bounced between homes. I ate lunch alone, spent study halls in the furthest corner of the library, and walked the pristine halls in a constant state of detachment. I began to realize the unfairness wasn't just accidental neglect, it was deliberate favoritism amplified by calculated malice. It stoked a quiet, cold fire in me. I was determined to prove my worth, not to them, but to myself. I would show them that the girl they had rejected was worth more than the facade they clung to. The quiet was my weapon. While Lily chased popularity and practiced her dramatic sighs, I dove into my studies. I wasn't trying to beat her, I was trying to find solid ground for myself. I started racking up achievements quietly. I earned the top score on the regional physics exam. I placed first in a national essay contest. I spent my weekends contributing code to an open source project that earned me a fellowship offer from a major university's summer program. These accomplishments were remarkable, but in the Harper household, they were merely footnotes. If Margaret noticed my scholarship award, she'd say, "That's lovely, dear. Just try not to overdo it, you'll burn out." If Nathan saw my engineering projects, he'd grunt, "Why don't you apply that big brain of yours to helping Lily with her history paper?" Lily, however, was keenly aware. She was accustomed to being the star, the effortlessly talented one. As my quiet achievements mounted, she grew visibly nervous. Her sweet veneer began to crack, leading to direct confrontations, always when the parents were out. One evening, Lily found me on the living room floor, surrounded by complex calculus notes. "Why are you always studying, Sophia? It's not a race, you know," she sneered, dropping her purse dramatically close to my papers. "It's not a race, Lily, it's my future," I replied, not looking up. "Something I'm building myself instead of inheriting." Her eyes flashed. "You think you're better than me? I was raised here. You're the accident, the mistake they're trying to fix." "No," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "I'm the original, you are the substitute, and frankly, the original model performs better." The tension became unbearable. I was excelling, but my birth parents still failed to fully recognize the scope of my ability, blinded by their protective love for Lily. Nathan's dislike hardened, fueled by Lily's daily lies about my supposed arrogance. Yet, every dismissive comment only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't working for their approval anymore. I was working for my exit plan. The prestigious Ethelred Scholarship was the holy grail, a full 4-year ride to any Ivy League school based entirely on academic merit, leadership, and a rigorous personal essay. The entire family, including Richard and Margaret, assumed it was Lily's to lose. Lily had applied with a beautifully crafted, highly emotional essay about her journey to self-discovery through the arts, a narrative they had helped her refine for weeks. I applied in secret. My essay was clinical, focused on my experience building resilience and self-worth from a young age, contrasting the love of my foster parents, John and Anna, with the isolation I felt upon returning to my birth family. I used my code projects and academic excellence as evidence of independent drive, not inherited privilege. The day the decisions were announced, Margaret hosted a small, tense gathering. Lily sat on the edge of the sofa, looking perfectly poised in her designer silk dress. Nathan was already congratulating her on the presumed win. Richard looked merely anxious for the result. The email landed on the family iPad. Margaret, her hand shaking slightly, opened it. She read the first line, then frowned, confused. "Lily, darling, it seems you were not selected. It says here, they chose a candidate of extraordinary resilience and intellectual capacity." Lily gasped, theatrically covering her mouth. "What? But my essay was beautiful." Then, a moment later, my phone pinged. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, opening the email. The bolded header read, "Congratulations, Sophia Harper, Ethelred Scholar, Class of 2026. I walked back into the living room, a sense of detached calm settling over me. I simply held up my phone. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard squinted at the screen. Margaret looked from my calm face to the furious, betrayed expression of Lily. Nathan, for once, was speechless. Twist. Sophia is the one accepted, clearly surpassing Lily. The scholarship was my ticket, my declaration of independence. It proved that my worth was inherent and could not be negated by neglect or manipulation. I realized that my long-term goal, financial stability and self-worth, had been achieved. I was ready to leave the gilded cage. Lily, in a panic, threw one last obstacle. She fabricated a story to Richard about me stealing one of her expensive pieces of jewelry, trying to frame me as a thief, linking me back to the supposed unsophisticated girl they found 2 years ago. This time, however, Richard looked at me, then at Lily's nervous eyes, and finally paused. He looked at my scholarship email, my flawless transcript, and his daughter, suddenly covered in lies. He started realizing Sophia's true abilities. The next morning, I stood in the same living room, facing Richard, Margaret, and a visibly agitated Lily. I had packed my bags, not for a trip, but for good. I need to talk to Lily, I stated simply. Lily, still trying to play the victim, sniffled. Oh, Sophia, please don't be mean. I just wanted everything to be like it was. Like it was? I challenged, my voice cutting through her performance. Like it was when you were manipulating my own parents into believing I was emotionally unstable so you could maintain your spotlight? Like it was when you almost had me drop my advanced classes because you feared I'd outshine you? I pulled out the saved transcripts of her emails to a friend, detailing how she planned to ostracize me at school. The truth, Lily, is that you are not sweet, you are not talented without massive support, and your whole persona is built on selfishness and deception. The difference between us is that I built my accomplishments on resilience, and you built yours on their money and their misplaced love. Lily's facade crumbled. She screamed and ran from the room, leaving Margaret weeping silently and Richard standing, shoulders slumped, looking utterly defeated. We were wrong, Sophia, Richard finally whispered, the words heavy with shame. We were so afraid of hurting Lily. We hurt you, our own daughter. We let her stay because she was familiar, and we pushed you away because you were the uncomfortable truth. We see it now. Your scholarship, your integrity. You are everything we ever hoped for. Nathan walked in, drawn by the noise, and heard Richard's confession. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His face contorted with regret and self-loathing. They wanted me to stay. They promised to change. They promised to start over. But I had already made my choice. I'm leaving, I said, picking up my suitcase. I appreciate the acknowledgement, but you had 2 years to choose me. I was the child who needed love and support when I arrived, and you gave it to the girl who had already manipulated you for years. True family, for me, isn't defined by blood, but by love and care. I drove across town, not to the airport, but to the small, cozy home of John and Anna Williams. They greeted me with wide, genuine smiles and a huge, warm hug. I chose my foster parents. I chose real love. My life settled into a rhythm of genuine warmth and affirmation. I was happy with John and Anna, focusing on my college preparations, confident in my intelligence and talents. John helped me build a new desk for my study, and Anna cooked my favorite comfort foods. They were thrilled, not just with the scholarship, but with the strong, independent woman I had become. My birth parents, Richard and Margaret, sent weekly letters, filled with remorse and desperate apologies. They respected my decision to stay with John and Anna, and they provided the financial means for my college and trust fund, as the legal documents dictated, but they accepted my boundary. Twist, Lily remained with the birth family. She was still their adopted daughter, but her influence over me, the threat of emotional sabotage, was extinguished. Her life was now under increased scrutiny from Richard, who was slowly learning to see the difference between performance and genuine competence. The message I carried was profound. True family is about love and care, not just blood. My resilience, forged in the quiet isolation of the Harper Mansion, allowed me to overcome profound injustice. I stood tall, recognized for my talent and intelligence, surrounded by the only love that truly mattered. I was home.